thank you so much for coming on today, Sabrina. It's really interesting to have a wide range of people on the podcast, and we haven't specifically had anyone from your field on, so we're really excited to have you on.
Thank you so much for having me, Roman.
Yeah. So yeah, maybe just to get started, would you like to go through your experience as an engineer and maybe discuss the key experiences along the way that have led you up to where you are today?
Yeah, 100%. So, during my career, I've done quite a bit of different changes between fields and really building on what I've learned every step. So, originally, I'm from Germany, where I studied mechanical engineering. Initially, I was really interested in plastics manufacturing. So, that's where I did my master's as well. And then I came to Australia and I was exposed to medical engineering. And this is also where I've done my PhD in. Doing a lot of research on biomechanics, using advanced simulation tools. And the skills that I've built there, I've then applied in my first industry role, which was a surgical robotics startup in Brisbane. So I really applied these simulation skills there to accelerate the development of the surgical robot. We started really at an early stage in the company where I joined. So the strategy, the IP, starting from first principle engineering up into the product development, working with the different stakeholders and surgeons and so on. And then I went into more of a defense application, now working in quantum sensing. And I have to say, even though it kind of might look a little bit like this, my career pathway, it felt all very organically, where at each step I learned new skills, I could apply them to the new role, then, learn new things about this application and really broaden my portfolio of engineering skills across the whole disciplines from, structural analysis, thermal analysis, compliance. So, there's a lot of regulatory aspects, both in medical engineering and in defense, that you need to be aware of and design around while also staying very innovative and agile. So yeah, it's just been, quite an interesting journey for me.
Yeah, I had a few friends who worked at the Hurston Biofab Institute. Is that where you were working previously?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that was actually an area I was really interested in joining. My research group wasn't quite located there, but I had a lot of intersection with people working there, and yeah, they're doing amazing things on there at the Hurston Biofabrication Institute, and a lot of these applications of patient specific medical applications and implants is something I've also done in my research. So yeah, it's a very exciting and growing field at the moment.
Yeah, cool. With simulation, what specific things would you simulate generally in the roles you've had?
Yeah, so it always depends on, so for each problem, there's different tools on how you can solve it. So for example, you might want to find out if your tool will, withstand the forces that it's exposed to, or if it will overheat. There's a lot of different things that you can think about, and there's different ways to then go about this problem. You could do a hand calculation and say, oh yeah, this is close enough. You can say, oh, I go with prototyping, or you could say, oh, prototyping takes forever, hand calculations aren't exact enough. So go into numerical simulations where you use softwares such as Ansys or Abacus. And there's really a lot of portfolio out there to do these analyses. So whatever you know about the problem, your boundary conditions, what are my forces, what is my model that I've designed, and does that then, with a specific safety factor, do you feel comfortable basically that will withstand these forces, and there's a lot to learn there. So a lot of people are exposed to it in university, but going into industry and really applying it to industry problems, there's a lot of quality standards that you need to work with, while also, keeping your velocity of development at the same time. So, for example, in the sensing application I'm currently working at, it's really important to know for sensors, are they structurally sound in their enclosure? Are they exposed to excessive vibrations? Are they exposed to excessive temperatures that could affect the accuracy? So these are all things that you want to really check before you go out and, maybe not perform as well as you want to.
Okay.
Um, I'm hoping you can walk us through your current role at Q-Control. You mentioned it in our chats that we're having through LinkedIn, and I was just hoping you could tell us a bit more about what you do at uh, or what you do there and what it involves with the quantum technology and what quantum technology actually is, because I don't really know what it is, to be honest.
Yeah, 100%. So, Yeah, Q-Control is really doing some amazing foundational work in quantum sensing at the moment. So in quantum sensing, you use interactions between atoms and use them to find your place in the world, so to say. So there's publicly available maps of gravitational fields or magnetic fields of the Earth. And using the sensors, you can then place yourself in these fields. And it makes it very independent of things like GPS, for example, which you may not have or you may not want to be detected by emitting something. So these sensors are really kind of self-contained. And they're very groundbreaking development at the moment because we're really the first in market to make technology, quantum technology useful in that sense. So that was something that really has drawn me to this company as well, to be at the forefront of this highly innovative work.
What application is there for quantum sensing?
So quantum sensing a lot at the moment is around navigation. So knowing, very reliably where you are when you may not have access to things like GPS. There's a lot of interest at the moment in the defense sector around this technology. So this is, currently one of the applications, but there may be other applications in the future, for different end users when the technology kind of develops and becomes more widely available.
What kind of technology is needed to sense like, someone's placement in this magnetic field?
So the quantum sensors, they can pick up variations in the magnetic field. And with these variations, you're then able to, without any visual input, kind of say where you are. So, let's say you have a map and you say, okay, this is a value here, this is a value here, this is a value here, this is
Mm.
a value here. By mapping the area around you, you can then match that back. And then basically say, okay, with a probability of so and so much, I am in this specific position.
Wow, it's really interesting technology actually. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Yeah.
How would you say what challenges do you have when designing quantum technologies, and like how do you overcome those specific challenges?
So in all the different projects I've worked on, medical robotics, quantum sensing, you're really working kind of at the forefront of engineering. So you have a lot of, iterations in prototyping. You have to really get your scientific foundation down. You have to work with engineering to the highest level, and then bring these together. So you're really pushing the needle, so to say. So there's a lot of kind of work, very foundational work that I'm used to in my PhD as well, um, where you're kind of pushing the edge every day. That's the main thing. So you're not doing something where you say, oh yeah, this is the industry standard. Everyone is doing it like this. We do it the same way, but it's something where you really have to drive that innovation every day.
Especially with something on such a forefront as well, I feel like you wouldn't really be able to necessarily learn from what others do in the same way you'd have to redesign, the way you do it.
Exactly, yeah. So for example, if you're making a car, you can say, okay, there's all these standards about cars that I can
Mm.
read, there's all of these other cars I can look at, right? But with these applications, you really internally you drive that innovation. So you're working really closely with all of the other teams, the scientists, the software engineers, electrical engineers, mechanical engineers. So you all have to work very tightly together to really, push that innovation every day.
Mm. Yeah, definitely.
What challenges do you come across with the within quantum technology?
Um, so in quantum technology, like with all of novel technologies, the main challenges are really, as I mentioned, that it's completely new. So there's a variety of scientific challenges that you push every day to get the product to the next stage. So for example, you may want to achieve a certain sensitivity and accuracy and so on. And what are the steps that you can take in engineering and science to achieve that? So there's really a lot of interdisciplinary work that's being done.
Yeah. And how do you prototype these things to test that exactly?
So at the moment, Q control is really going from the going into the real world application of these sensors. So we are currently in the process of doing a lot of field trials. So you're creating the sensors, integrating them into different vehicles and testing them out in the field.
I'm interested more
Great.
about the arthroscopic robot you developed and how was the world's
Mm-hmm.
first. I'm interested in that. Can you please explain that more and discuss what it featured?
Yeah, 100%. So in this robot, and it might also be interested, for industrial designers because we worked a lot
Mm.
with industrial designers. So arthroscopy is keyhole joint surgery. So you don't open up the joint, you go in through small holes called portals with millimeter scale instruments, which means that you have these requirements when it comes to precision and strength, and size and manufacturability, price, etc. There's a lot of different aspects to it, and also the user experience itself, where we worked together very closely with industrial designers to make that happen. So getting all of these things, getting that balance right on all aspects, that was something that was really challenging, that we were really working with all different stakeholders to make that happen.
Yeah, good.
How did the collaboration between the designers and also like orthopedic surgeons influence the design of that robot?
Yeah, so the working very closely with the end user was one of the main goals, really, because the end user acceptance or how much they love the product at the end of the day will determine how successful your product was. So we're working very closely. We had a lot of feedback cycles with our surgeons. They're also called key opinion leaders because they're basically, driving that design to such a high degree. So, we would tell them, this is what is really important to you in the design. Which features are you used to? Some of these things they might very actively know. Some things you really have to kind of communicate on a high level to kind of tease out exactly what they want. And then also show the designs back to them to be like, this is how I interpreted this. This is the current status. What do you think about this? Really keep really close to the end user. What you don't want to do is you want to just be in your little office, design something all the way to the end, give it to them, and then they're like, oh, this is actually not at all what I wanted. And then industrial designers are really amazing at then making this product really usable, making it really user friendly. When you want to attach and detach certain things, for example, making it really smooth, making the product really beautiful as well. So as a mechanical engineer, you might be like, oh yeah, it's just, make it strong and bolt something on there. But making this, this product, really branded, giving it this brand identity. That has been really amazing to see what industrial designers are able to achieve.
Yeah, I find the connection between industrial designers and engineers really interesting. Like I know when I studied QT as well, and so did Ethan, and we obviously studied with a lot of engineers and industrial designers, and I found it really interesting. Like there's some people that seem to have sort of like an engineering design mind, and then there's some people that have like purely engineering mind, and then there's some designers that have purely design mind. It's interesting to see like how different minds can think different ways. Is that something you experienced as well in your degree?
Yeah, 100%. So everyone is coming into a project from a different perspective,
Hmm.
and other things are important to them. So for example, me as a mechanical engineer, every time I look at something, I'm like, will this actually hold against the forces? Will this actually, live across the product lifespan? Industrial designers might think more about the user experience, and the aesthetics of the product, and then electrical software, etc. And it's super important that all of these perspectives are brought in
Hmm.
and respected at the same level, and really combined into the product to create something that is engineered at the highest level, from all aspects.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely one of those things where collaboration produces a better result. Like I remember I think it was my capstone, well, actually, no, one of my subjects anyway, one of the last subjects. There was a guy who was engineering and design, double degree, and he
Mm-hmm.
designed this really, really amazing brake system on this trolley and all this different mechanical side of it. And my teacher comes up and he says, this is really great, this mechanism, but where's the design behind it? Like, it's not usable, it's uncomfortable to use and all these things. And it's like
Yeah,
he
exactly.
couldn't
Yeah.
grasp the like that side of it. He's like, yeah, but I've made this awesome thing. So it's one of those things where it's really good to have both different people, or even someone who kind of has both mindsets. And you can really work together to create a good result. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I think for a good engineering manager, if they're to manage these interdisciplinary projects, it's really important that they have this open mind and let all of the different disciplines work on the project and be included as they need to, yeah, to, as you said, avoid that one aspect of the project completely falls off the table.
Yeah, definitely.
And how did you balance the like technical depth of that and leadership, like and project direction across both the convergence role and also the Q control?
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of management, self-management, but also people management involved in all these projects. So, you need to one thing that helped me really was to separate my time. So to kind of learn about myself, when are my times where I'm really good at doing the deep technical work? Where are times where, it's maybe I do some easier tasks? Where are times where I'm in a mindset of, okay, I now really can dive into something new, quote unquote, that I haven't looked at yesterday, and maybe review some work from a team member or another person. You kind of split your day like this. And then, give each aspect, sufficient time to be able to, give a fast turnaround for your team members, keep the stakeholders informed, do your technical work, etc. Really, splitting your day like this, I think is really, really helpful.
Mm.
Yeah, definitely. And my main question from this is, how do you take something from a design and engineering kind of prototype and process that to being clinically ready and actually being used in the medical field? Like, how does that work from development to manufacture to industry?
Yeah, definitely. So in medical engineering, you have basically a waterfall model, and all devices go through 5 stages. So you start with the user specifications. And that sounds easy, but it's actually a huge phase because you really need to understand for all parts of your project, what are the requirements, from your user, from the hospital, from regulatory guidelines, industry standards, etc. So you need to then bring that all in. And then go into the first stage, which is concept design, where you explore a couple of different options, you do some preliminary testing, proof of principle, numerical simulations, etc. Then you go into the next stage, which is design for manufacturing. So at this point, you really consider, okay, how am I going to actually make this? Do I need to make some changes to the design? Could this then affect, again, the usability or the strength, for example? And then you go into the phase 3 and 4, which are verification and validation. So in verification, you will then check if your system actually performs as expected. Does it have the strength that it needs? Do the parts actually come back from the manufacturer looking like they're supposed to? And then in validation, you give it back to the user. So you actually do some usability testing. You let the surgeon have a go with the instrument, for example, and see, okay, this is actually, behaving like it's supposed to be. I can do what I wanted to do with it, or what I'm used to doing with a tool that's similar to this. And then after this, in phase 5, which is ongoing, is the release into market, but also the post-market surveillance. So while your product is in market, you always need to be able to receive this user feedback, if there's any problems or if there's even any incidences with the system. And if anything happens, to do that root cause analysis and then be like, okay, why is this happening? Is it something in my design that I need to change? Is it something with the manufacturer that I need to work on, etc.?
There seems to be
Great.
quite a lot of overlap to industrial design as well, like in some of the regards. But I suppose that's why the two different processes sort of complement each other quite well when you work when in industry. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So with industrial designers, you really want to, if it's possible, to keep them across the whole life cycle of the product. I think that's the best way to have this long-term collaboration.
Mm.
If they really understand the product, if every partner in that you're having in this process really understands the project and is there across the life cycle, I think that's always the best outcome. Because you might send something off to a partner and you say, oh, this needs to be 5 millimeters, but if they actually understand why you think this needs to be 5 millimeters, they can give you way better feedback on why something may or may not work on their end.
Mm. Yeah, it's the same with engineers. With working with engineers, I remember sometimes I've worked with engineers, and I'll come up with this crazy idea, and then I'll send it to them, and then they'll just knock it back and say, this is terrible. This would not work. That's why sometimes that initial collaboration, you can kind of go through some ideas, and they can be like, oh, that won't work, but maybe we could try this, and that's where the collaboration is the most important. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Um, just something different. Where do you see the most exciting overlap or opportunities between medical robotics and quantum sensing or sensors into the future?
Yeah, I think both robotics and quantum are currently two very innovative fields where there's a lot of movement happening. One of the biggest transferable aspects that I found is really just the ability to work with interdisciplinary teams and work with a lot of different stakeholders. So you always have your end user that has certain requirements or constraints, especially in regulated technologies like defense and medical engineering. And there's a lot of different engineering disciplines that are working together, where you need to understand each other's requirements, each other's constraints, and so on. So there's really, it seems kind of far removed from the outside, but a lot of the skills are actually quite similar across the two disciplines.
Yeah.
I'm specifically
And
interested. Sorry, you
yeah,
go.
go on. No, you go.
I'm just interested in AI and the integration to engineering. I know with industrial design, AI has been very transformative in the last few years with various different things. I know with simulation, it seems like it's coming in more. I'm interested how you think AI is
Mhm.
going to transform the way you do your job in a few years' time.
Yeah, 100%. So there's actually some AI tools that are coming into engineering now as well. So for example, simulations can be very, very time consuming to run and to set up. So you have your model, you have to do the meshing, you have to do the boundary condition. If there's any change somewhere, you have to basically redo the whole thing again,
Hmm.
go into post-processing, etc. And there's now AI tools which basically don't run these very complex solving processes, but instead do very, very fast approximate runs of your model by just putting in like a few very rough boundary conditions, which really cuts away the time, the setup time, I don't know, by 80%. Especially if you want to make some small changes, you don't have to redo the whole process. It basically just, you make the change and it immediately runs again.
Well,
This really cuts out a lot of time in the initial kind of finding your way phase of a design. So where you say, oh, do I put this here? Do I put this there? Do I make this thick or that thick? And then when you get really close to what you think is a good solution, you can then run, the big effort run, the proper run, which gives you your real data.
hmm.
But it really, nowadays, by using these AI approximations, you're able to be a lot more agile with the early stage of a design where some major things might actually be changing in your design every week.
To speed up iteration. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah, because still in simulations and engineering, there's a lot of kind of busy work in the sense that you really need to tediously set up your model for it to give you actually some good results. And by having these tools that automate a lot of this stuff for you, you take out a lot of this work, which you can then apply to some higher
Hmm.
engineering tasks, and then come back to it when you're actually wanting to do your final round of simulations.
Yeah, definitely.
What excites you about the future direction of your current work?
Basically everything. It's just such an exciting field. I see the results that, we generate. A lot of it is on social media. I'm not sure if you had a chance yet to have a look, but yeah, it's just so amazing how the technology has developed in the last couple of years from being almost just a research field into having a real software application and now actually having a real hardware sensing application as well. And yeah, yeah, you can only imagine how things are going to progress over the next few years, and what things we can achieve with this technology. Yeah, so it's really exciting to be at this forefront of development and R&D.
Yeah, definitely. And technology is developing so fast. Even in the last like
Yeah,
20
it's
years,
crazy.
where
Yeah, I
can it
mean,
be in the
just
next
a
20
few
years?
years ago, AI was, I don't know, I've never really heard much about it. You just heard the word, but nowadays, everyone uses, ChatGPT to help with certain things, to write that email to your landlord or whatever. So yeah, it's amazing. And these things get integrated into our lives so quickly as well. So, they just pop up and suddenly everyone's using it every day. And
Mm.
yeah, it's very exciting times.
Yeah, it's amazing how quick adoption happens. Like something that would seem so crazy, 6 months ago, just like even when Google implemented the AI as the first thing you see now when you search anything, like that would have been game change. That would have
Yeah.
been some crazy thing for someone to hear a few years ago. And now it just happened and no one really even questioned it. It was just part of the change. Yeah.
Yeah, it's exciting to see how quick people pick this up as well. So it's not like you
Mm.
see this and there's a lot of resistance or I don't know how to use this, which is maybe also because, the design is just so well,
Mm.
how they developed this project and this program. But yeah, it's the take up is pretty amazing.
Yeah. What role do you see engineers as in the AI world to come? Do you see it as more of a like a backseat sort of approach where you control the effect, but you maybe don't have as much direct contact as you do now?
So I think with engineers, depending on what exactly you're working on at the time, I think it's really important as the end user to inform the AI as well. So not just use it, but also, give some input on, what's required, what is a good result, what is a bad result, what is helpful, what is not helpful. I think there's currently a lot of development in all different engineering tools to integrate these kinds of aspects. Because as I said, there's a lot of engineering tasks that might cause frustrations because they're very repetitive, very tedious, etc. And if they can be taken over by AI to free up time for creative design work and high level verification, etc., I think that would be very well received by a lot of end users.
Definitely.
Um, how do you approach design for manufacture in projects where tolerances and materials are critical?
Yeah, so again, with when it comes to manufacturers, I think keeping that channel of communication open is really, really important. So understanding the capabilities of the manufacturer, understanding your requirements and communicating them to the manufacturer is extremely important. I found if you have a manufacturer that's very open to these kinds of talks, and like going over their capabilities, going over your drawings, etc., and what you want to achieve, and you usually get way better outcomes than if you have your drawing, you send it off, even though your drawing is completely correct, and then you receive something that's not as expected, and then you go into like, okay, why did this happen, etc., etc. The manufacturer may not be very communicative, so you're like, okay, is this my fault? Do I need to change something, or do we need to change something on your side? So again, having this communication and having this close relationship to your manufacturer at all stages of the design or as early as possible, I think is one of the most important things to ensure that get a high quality product.
Yeah, definitely. And I imagine there's some fairly strict limitations and boundaries in the medical industry. Like, how do you keep your design so, or I guess, broad or um, open to opportunity?
Yeah, definitely. So in medical devices, all of the manufacturers actually have to be certified to all relevant standards. So it's actually not that easy to become a medical manufacturer. So you have to really, when you do your selection of manufacturers, you have to be quite careful there to make sure that, they meet all of the requirements. And then there's something called first article inspection. So before you can even bring your design into circulation, you actually need to receive and very carefully check what they sent you, especially for the first couple of batches, and then make sure that it really within the tolerances matches what you were expecting. So there's this really tight feedback and control loop in medical devices, which you need to meet before you can actually release the product. And that makes sure that, the quality for the patient is always, at the highest level and always reliable.
Mm.
Yeah, definitely.
What futures do you see for the quantum technology field, in your career and as well as just in the wider space?
Yeah, I think it has a great future. I think what we see, from the first, trials and, press releases, etc., is that the technology is extremely promising. And I do think it's the future of navigation, GPS-free navigation. So yeah, I see a very bright future. And with a lot of defense applications, you never really know what will happen with the technology. Does it stay within defense? Does it become more broadly available? We know when it came to the space flights, the early space flights, a lot of the technology that was developed specifically for this is actually now very widely available for people to use in everyday life. So this is, potentially something that could happen down the future as well. It's just such a fast-paced field. It's really hard to say what will be, happening in 10 years. Like, we discussed with AI, it can just, happen within a few years and become the new standard. Yeah.
Mm. Do you see it replacing GPS, or is there some key limitations that you think would be a barrier to replacing it?
Look, I think it always depends what you really need for your application. With everyday use of things like GPS, it might be good enough, it might be more affordable. It's really hard to say, with a novel developed product, if it can really meet, a wide end user market like this. But yeah, we just basically have to see, what the application will be, what the user needs will be, for the wider public.
Mm. Maybe to continue on, what specific advice have you picked up in your career that you think someone just graduating out of university in your degree would wish they had?
I would say if something is scaring you but also exciting you, just go through it. Because especially when you just graduate, you're like, oh no, you don't know what to do, you don't know what to say, you're like a bit scared of doing the wrong thing. But just putting yourself out there, applying yourself, looking out for these mentors, which may not be formal mentors, but maybe just people that, are open to helping you, are open to giving to you advice, are open to giving you, a chance to, speak up in the meeting, go to the networking event, put your hand up when, they're offering, a small leadership task somewhere in a project. So to really keep pushing yourself out of that comfort zone, because this is really when you learn.
Mm.
Because you bring certain skills to the job. This is, what I hired you. You know quite a few things, but then to really branch out and learn a lot of stuff and become an expert and become, build that self-confidence. It's really important to put yourself out there and, do that scary thing.
Mm. Do you see specific figures in your early career that helped, mold you into the person you are today?
Yeah, 100%. So I was very lucky to have some amazing mentors. And yeah, there's a lot of great people there if you have issues, just to reach out to people, and people are really happy to help you. A lot of people, you think, oh, I can't ask this guy. He's, a professor, he's so senior in his job. But a lot of people are actually very, very happy to help you. And I built some great relationships that way. And they're still lasting today. They're still lasting, 10 years after the fact.
Mm.
And yeah, just to, not be scared to really put yourself out there.
100%. Build the network. That's what's important. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
Just jumping back onto the user testing, just something that I wanted to ask. Um, you mentioned you give it to users and they bring feedback back. Have you ever had to significantly redesign something after it's come back after the user testing?
Yeah, so a lot of it is, a prototyping development process. You definitely it depends kind of on your industry. So in medical devices, there's very specific ways you can change a design and can't change a design without massive retesting. So this is why it's really important to keep these iterations quite frequent, keep the feedback loop really tight between you and your end user. But yeah, there's definitely things, where, an end user might say, oh, I want it to look like this. You interpret it a certain way, you give it out, and then you show it to them like, oh, this is actually not what I meant. I actually meant this. Or sometimes it's just kind of the vibe right? Like
Mm.
there's things that you can't really put into words. So you have to actually give them the thing, let them use it, let them hold it and say, oh, I actually expected to use less or more force for this. Or, actually, this actually looks kind of small. I know I said 3 millimeters or 5 millimeters or whatever, but actually it looks a little bit smaller than expected. So just these kinds of nuances you can't really pin down beforehand.
Mm.
So yeah, just getting that feedback frequently, I think is the most important thing. Otherwise, the further you get kind of into this design, the higher the cost of making that change will be.
Yep.
Yeah, I feel like it's the same in design to some degree. Like even with AI, it's probably gonna be very hard to implement in engineering field, to replace, traditional, impact testing and even things like that, because there's so many real world conditions that, affect the way things perform. It's the same in design as well. Like even the way the human interacts, it's very hard to calculate that, through machine learning when it's something that's not even necessarily that tangible. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, a lot of things you try to quantify as much as possible and make them into certain standards, but some things are just yeah, you just have to get that user feedback. Yeah.
Mm. Do you have an example of where that was the case?
um let's have a think. I think one of the instruments that we designed, we gave them to the user, and before that we got like we basically asked them, what do you think this needs to be, what do you think that needs to be dimension wise, right, geometry wise. And when we gave it to them, the feedback was basically, oh, this is actually, a lot smaller than I expected, just from kind of the look of it.
Mm.
And I guess it's really hard when you ask someone, okay, do you think this should be 3 millimeters or 5 millimeters, or, what do you use? So yeah, that was just like one of these small little things, but you don't want your user to get it and then be like, oh, this is kind of not what I expected, a little bit off. So yeah, that was just one of these things that we were lucky to pick up really early into prototyping. We basically just gave them the instrument without any of the smarts around it, basically just the first prototyping. We're like, oh, just give it a go, give it a use. And they're like, oh yeah, I wish it was a little bit more like this. And, then you can make these changes really, really easily at that stage.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's amazing how sometimes like really weird things like weight or size or any of these things can make such a big difference to the way someone perceives an object. Like actually at the moment my friend bought one of those new Ninja machines that makes ice cream out of anything. And the box for it, like the actual motor compartment's massive. And I was saying to him, I feel like it's just empty real estate, but it's there to make it look more like powerful and more technologically advanced because it just seems
Yeah,
kind
it's
of
a good
ridiculous
point.
there's that much space in there. But it may be like, maybe it is for some sort of reason like that. Like maybe in user testing, they realized that, a small motor maybe didn't seem as capable or something like that. Like quite often in user testing, things like that can come up. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. You might be able to achieve what the end user wants, but it doesn't have this impression that it's
Mm,
powerful, even though it is. Yeah,
exactly.
I guess there's a lot of subconscious things associated with some of these design choices. Yeah.
Mm.
And, as a mechanical engineer, you might be, what do you mean? I got 2 Newton meters of torque. This is what it's supposed to be, right? Why do I need this huge enclosure around my motor? But, there's all of these other aspects that, the end user or, an industrial designer might be able to add to that and, make sure that everyone's happy.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe just to wrap up, like I think we've gone through a whole bunch of different topics, and I really appreciate your time. Maybe just to wrap up, would you like to discuss where you see your career going and what kind of exciting experiences you see on the horizon that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, 100%. I'm really looking forward to really diving deep into quantum sensing. I just started this role recently, and I just see so much potential here and so much exciting technology. It's really my hope, my priority to always just stay in these really innovation driven fields. It's something I've been really enjoying working with all of the different types of disciplines and engineers and end users. This is something I'm hoping to continue to do in the future. And I'm also getting more and more involved currently in the engineering community with Engineers Australia. And I'm really trying to give back. So I know I've gotten a lot of good mentoring, a lot of help during my early career. And I'm now trying to really give that back. help the next generation of engineers, to step up into these, exciting roles, because there's a lot of amazing things happening currently in the Australian startup and, general technical environment. So yeah, I'm just very exciting times ahead.
Great to hear. Thank you
Great.
so much
Yeah.
for coming on today, Sabrina. Really appreciate your time, and I'm really excited to learn more about your field that I had absolutely no idea about, as I said. And now I know a little bit about it, so thank you so much, and I hope everyone enjoyed it. If they'd like to reach out, they can find you on LinkedIn. Is there anywhere else that you'd like people to reach out to?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn sounds perfect.
Yep, cool, awesome. Thanks a lot for that. Have a good day. See you later.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.